Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate forum, which you should definitely all join. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion right here, right now, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Trish and Sleeping Warrior, along with 10th Man and Flatzoid. How you all doing?
Very well.
Yo, yo.
Hello, hello. A bit quiet, Anthony. Have you dropped from Skype now? Maybe not. We're also joined by a whole bunch of people in Discord. How are you all doing in Discord?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Hello, hello, hello. Any signs of Earth curvature?
Not from Florida.
Any more for any more? Earth curve, main focus of the show. People think they live on a sphere. Earth curve, anybody? Okay. Any signs of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Absolutely not.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Gravity is not a force, but it's also a force.
So
Not a force.
Forget George Musa saying that gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. There's another PhD guy that's more recent, or certainly PhD level anyway, maybe not more recent, but he says that gravity doesn't exist, and we've known for some time that it doesn't exist. It's time that we yell it from the rooftops, or words to that effect.
Any evidence?
Can't even define it, let alone prove it.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
No evidence for that, Nathan.
No.
Nothing.
Any evidence for the distance to the Sun?
No.
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 Apparent distance.
Apparent, yeah, not actual. No. Any evidence of the actual distance to the Sun? No? Any evidence that you can
Nope.
have gas pressure without the necessary
No.
antecedent of a container while I get rumpused?
No evidence for gas pressure without a container.
No.
The antecedent.
There's
no.
no evidence a container around the Earth, and we have gas pressure.
Do you know what the word antecedent means? Take time.
Who?
What's that?
Do you know what the word antecedent means?
I do, and that's a claim that hasn't been proven.
Sorry, you think the necessary antecedent isn't proven by tens of millions of demonstrations of gas pressure being maintained by way of container? You think that's not proven?
Well,
No, I think you'll find
Well,
it's
I mean,
it's the
by
inverse.
your own admission, in the same way that tens of millions of things falling down and the vector of down isn't proof of gravity.
Can you speak
By
up
your
a
own
bit?
standards, no.
I didn't hear the beginning of that. Say that again.
Sleep.
I said, even by your own standards of tens of millions of things falling down and there being vector of down and accelerating down, no.
Like what? Tens of millions of what? What's falling down? I'm sitting here, nothing's falling down. What are you talking about?
Yeah, you drop something, it accelerates.
Sorry,
20 meters per
you
second.
drop something is you dropping something now, isn't it? You asserted that things are falling down. There's tens of millions of them. Now you're picking something up and dropping it. No. Tens of million things aren't being dropped by you simultaneously when you pick them up and drop them. What the hell are you on about? No, that's you picking something up.
What I'm trying to say is that you guys are introducing a claim that there is a container in the gas pressure that we experience. That's not been proven. There's no evidence for it.
Yeah, it has, by the thousands of demonstrations of containers. To quote Conspiracy Cats, who's a school teacher, without the container, there can be no pressure. Now, that's a fact. It's an antecedent-consequent relationship. The necessary antecedent to have gas pressure is something to press upon. That's not proven. That's a fact.
No, that's not proven.
Oh, really? Well, maybe you can demonstrate gas pressure without a container. Go.
And I'm saying outside. We walk outside.
Not your fundy fucking belief in what the sky is. A demonstration.
Don't rumpus me, Nathan.
I want a demonstration beyond your religious fundamentalist assertion having walked outside and pointed at the sky. Yeah? So you're going to say the sky, the thing that we can't prove has a container, doesn't have a container because you believe, having pointed at it, that it doesn't have a container, despite the fact that the antecedent to have pressure is a container. You think your fundy belief is going to trump that?
No, what I'm saying is that there is no evidence of a container.
It's the necessary antecedent. How many times have I got to say it? Without the container, there can be no pressure.
That, according to Nathan.
According to Conspiracy Cats. I quoted him by name. Not according to Nathan, according to a teacher called Conspiracy Cats. Quote, without the container, there can be no pressure. End quote. He also qualified it in 2018. Without the balloon, there is no pressure. End quote. So no, not according to Nathan. According to one of the fundies on your side who teaches this subject. It's a necessary antecedent. And your fundy belief in what the sky does definitely doesn't defy the necessary antecedent to have gas pressure, you bloody fundy. Show me gas pressure without a container. Hello? Show me gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container. That's the housekeeping question. We've got to the point where you've pointed at your fundy belief.
Nathan, it's clear that he's doing something else in the background. He's either someone's talking to him in the background or otherwise. So let's just keep the pregnant pause and make it look like they were just dickheads, because that is what's happening.
Yeah, Anthony, maybe you can tell him what his own scientists say about gravity.
I can get it on screen if you want, Nathan.
Sure.
Bear with me. Screen share.
Not addressed anything I've said. He says, according to Nathan. No, not according to Nathan. According to Conspiracy Cats, quote, without the container, there can be no pressure. Pressure being pressing on what? The surface area. That's how you'll measure it. Per unit area. That's what you'll be measuring it. Area of what? The container. That's what. So, we are absolutely in no doubt that without the container there can be no pressure. It's part of the maths, the area of the container the gas is going to press upon. Yeah? Boyle's law also giving you an area that the gas will be in. The second law of thermodynamics dictating that the gas will fill that available area. All of these things are describing the area of a container. So your fundy belief, dipshit, isn't going to trump that. These are facts. So what have you got to say? What, that's my definition of it when it isn't? Is that your rebuttal? Well, according to Nathan, when it's not, it's according to a teacher called Conspiracy Cats.
He's run away.
Of course he has. Go on, you're on screen. Go ahead, Anthony.
This is an article from a guy called Dennis Overby, but it's relating to a bloke called I can't remember what his bloody name is now. Verlinder, Dr. Verlinder. For him, gravity does not exist, said Dr. Verlinder. He goes on and on. This is a really long article, but he describes. I mean, he's a real person. He's out in the public. His specialism is in string theory, but in the context of gravity, he knows gravity does not exist. And right at the very end of the document, he concludes by saying, "We've known for a long time that gravity does not exist. It's time to yell it." So not only is gravity not a force, but you can think of it as a force. It doesn't even exist, and they've known about it for a long time. So all you fundies that are claiming that gravity is a force, still, I just can't even have a conversation with anybody that argues that gravity is a force anymore. Even when they say it manifests itself as a force, I still can't have a conversation with you because it doesn't even exist. It's literally everywhere. Just do a cursory search on Google for "is gravity a force?" It's written everywhere. It's not a force. It doesn't even exist. So
he recalled. Hold on, put it back up. Hold on.
And this is from their side.
Just pop it back up, Sleeping Warrior.
Oh shit! Do you know? I was just about to. Yeah, hang on. There we go.
He recalled that someone told him the other day that the unfolding story of gravity was like the Emperor's new clothes. Well, not really there. That was all. Sorry, Flat Sword. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, and this is from their side of the argument, their scientists saying this. Straight in their face.
Yeah, it's literally, we've known for a long time that gravity does not exist. It's time to yell it. Well, we're yelling it, and we have been for a while, and we're asking, I mean, I don't know why, honest to God, ballers, if you don't accept that gravity is not even a force, then there's no conversation to have with you, because you're literally ignoring your current science. You're going back to a science that happened in the First World War. Well, current science isn't saying that anymore, guys, and it's not just one document; it's everywhere. So let's at least get up to speed with the current definition of what gravity is, because it's definitely not a force.
Hey, Anthony, I went and checked this guy out and watched a full hour lecture from him. Righteous, I've got 3 slides on Master B. If you could post it so that Nathan could show it. It's very interesting what he does in this lecture. It pertains to our last caller. I don't know why he does it this way, but he did, and I caught it.
All right, give me a sec.
I'm pretty sure that Michelle Cavendish gravity
Yeah,
was
Riley,
already...
if you
Go ahead, Black Sword.
Sorry, if Riley went on there, what you saw on that paper, the regions of gravity on there. If you read that, you'd see it's actually putting the effects of gravity on the thermodynamics and entropy.
Yeah.
You have to speak up a little bit. You're a bit quiet.
It's all good.
There we go. Nathan, if you could show that screen.
Yeah, you're on.
All right. So this was a screenshot I saw, the one that everyone sees right now. We've known for a long time gravity doesn't exist. It's time to yell it. Dr. Eric Verlind, physics professor and string theorist, Amsterdam University. So I decided I'm going to go listen to one of his lectures. Go to the next slide, Righteous, please. And in this next lecture, this was one of his slides. And he's talking about entropy and bits. And look what it says, gas molecule, and it's got a container. I'm saying, well, why is he showing that if he's talking about outer space where it's a vacuum? Why has he got a container trying to, why not just have the gas molecules with just black? Go to the next slide. And then he goes, entropy equals measures the amount of inaccessible information. I mean, this guy's really way out there, but guess what? He has to use a container to show how way out there he is. Found it pretty funny.
This is why in Bullbusters on Saturday, John was trying to highlight that you can't throw science under the bus. Science is a method of establishing cause and effect. So science in this regard has got absolutely nothing to worry about. And, you know, whether or not people believe in the heliocentric model or not, when it comes to actual physics, they're just going to talk about it how it is. And if it's backed by experimental validation, then that's going to be empirical. They're not going to have anything to worry about. The only people who've got stuff to worry about in this regards are the pseudoscientists who are basically promoting a religion. They're the people who've got to be concerned, because they're just so stories are going to fall apart. Gravity's just one of them, and it's falling apart at the seams.
Yeah, never once did he cite the scientific method, offer actual evidence for the process that he took. It was just his thinking, and let's just go out here and think this way now. It's like, that's pseudoscience. You're not at all being honest.
Any evidence of the R value?
No.
No.
Only, do you know what? It dawned on me last night, right? I was watching one of the Hangouts from maybe a week ago when we first started talking about Coriolis. And I said to Nathan at the time, I said, like, they're only doing this because they can obfuscate the point that much that everybody ends up confused. They've got to argue Coriolis to obfuscate the point. The point's simple. If Earth's not turning, there is no Coriolis, right? But they want to argue that there's Coriolis. So they will argue it just to create the impression that something exists when it doesn't, because there is no apparent deflection. We all know that. And if there is any deflection and it infers that it might be potentially down to the rotation of the Earth, well, they can't prove that it is, because there are other factors that influence the trajectory of a bullet, like pressure variations, a bit of humidity, a little bit of wind across the path. There's a variety of things. You only need it doesn't matter. There's numerous things that can cause a bullet to change its course. And it doesn't mean it's the curvature, the rotation of the Earth, because obviously you can't manipulate it to prove that it is. But they've got to argue it anyway. And it seems to be, when you say any evidence of R, the only time that R comes up is in curvature calcs when you use the curve calcs. So if you beg the question and you argue curve calcs, then R comes into it. It's the same with Earth turn. The only time that there's any evidence of Earth turn is when they beg the question by demanding that Coriolis is a thing or not. Well, it doesn't apply unless there's actually an Earth turn. Let's establish that the Earth's turning before we start arguing how much of it is causing bullets to deflect. Oh, what do you mean bullets don't deflect? Then there is no curvature, is there? There is no Earth turn, is there?
Well, so to put it more succinctly, right? So you're saying it doesn't need R, it's assuming Earth rotation and Coriolis. Well, no, it does need R. So the way they're arguing it is saying everything takes place on a non-inertial spinning reference frame. Well, what that actually means when you boil it down is, I demand we start this argument with us begging the question of the Earth spinning. So all of my examples and all of my arguments, and whether or not they happen or don't happen, are going to start with the premise that we're on a non-inertial spinning reference frame. Zanuck said it 1,000 times. All they're doing is begging the question. They're saying, Earth is a ball that spins. Now let's argue about what we see. And we can argue all day long about it. Doesn't matter whether I win, lose, or draw in the argument, because every single premise for this argument of Coriolis will start with us being on a ball that spins with an R value, with all the latitude lines on it, right? Yeah. So they're immediately begging the question of a spinning ball Earth when they say, right, no, it's all taking place on a non-inertial spinning reference frame. So we're automatically begging the question that the Earth spins. So the way you asked the other day, how do you undo this argument succinctly? And at the time I hadn't given it so much thought as to round it out as quickly as I'm going to do now. All you do is say, you're begging the question. We're not going to start this argument with you assuming your outcome that the Earth is a spinning ball, and therefore this effect does, or does not, as the case is with Coriolis, happen. No. You're going to start by proving that it spins. Not assuming it spins and then describing what may or may not happen based on your presupposition that we're on a spinning ball, a non-inertial turning reference frame. No. So from now on, whenever this subject comes up, the argument won't start with them detailing what happens in terms of Coriolis, because they're actually arguing for a spinning ball Earth that they'll presuppose. They're just begging the question. It's always that way. It just takes us a little time to figure out why they're doing what they're doing. Why do they always start the argument only talking from the position of the voyeuristic, I'm standing on a non-inertial spinning reference frame watching you? Well, it's not so much to do with the watching, it's more to do with the begging the question. If I can start this argument with the presupposition that we're on a non-inertial spinning reference frame, like the roundabout, it doesn't matter if I argue about whether or not we do see deviation, because it's all one reference frame, it's all a non-inertial spinning reference frame, or I argue that we do see deviation because we've got two separate reference frames in the form of the gyroscope or the bullet that I'm going to use most often than not. Because it doesn't matter which argument gets won or lost, the premise was always the same. We've begged the question, we've started the argument on the spinning ball Earth. We're all on a non-inertial spinning reference frame, says Zanuck. It's always a non-inertial spinning reference frame. Everything's taking place in the non-inertial spinning reference frame. Well, that means he's just begging the question. He's saying it must be a spinning Earth. That's how we're going to start this argument from now on. And I'm just going to say from now on, that's begging the question. No, you're here to prove that the Earth's spinning, not start with the supposition that it's spinning, and then prove it with that supposition in mind. Absolutely not. First, prove it spins. And it was you saying this, Anthony, that made me realise it. You're like, no, that's just begging the question. I'm like, yeah, but it is, but they're arguing about how we see the non-inertial reference frame of... It's like, why am I doing this? They're just demanding that we beg the question of a spinning ball Earth right at the beginning of the argument. Why didn't I spot this sooner? You spotted it, Anthony. I'm like, yeah, but we need to explain how the non-inertial reference frame spinning underneath the pendulum would be defied by the plane that would take an hour and a half from Charlotte to LA. No, just say you're begging the question. Don't start by telling us that we're on a spinning ball Earth. Prove your premise. Don't start with your premise and go from there. That's begging the question, assuming your outcome. So let's start by being on a non-inertial spinning reference frame, a spinning ball Earth. That's the very thing they're trying to prove. So you don't start with your premise. That's begging the question. So I just won't allow that from now on. What's that you want to talk about Coriolis? Coriolis' effect that happens on a roundabout. What's that got to do with Earth? Well, let's just say we're on a non-inertial spinning reference frame. No, because that's begging the question.
Saying let's just say, Nathan, is exactly how we move from a hypothesis to from an observation to a potential hypothesis.
Oh, right.
I don't know why you're taking
That's
issue
fascinating. So you're
with
saying
that.
this is science then? Excellent. So what's the observed phenomena
No.
in this instance? Yeah, you just made a load of scientific words. You used the word hypothesis, and now you're going to say no. I'd like to know what the observed phenomena is, first of all, if this is science. If it's not science, then why have you used the word hypothesis?
Because you can use the word hypothesis. What do you mean, why have I used the word hypothesis?
What, you mean like a Mystic Meg prediction? Is it a scientific prediction with an empirical outcome, or a Mystic Meg bullshit prediction that you'll make that has absolutely no empiricism attached to it whatsoever? Which one is it? Empirical?
No, but
Scientific?
you're using the idea of begging the question completely incorrectly.
Assuming your outcome. If you're trying to prove the Earth spins, starting with the premise that we're on a non-inertial spinning reference frame is absolutely, unequivocally begging the question. I don't misunderstand
It
this
is not
fallacy.
begging the question.
Yeah, it is. If the question is whether or not Earth spins, and you start with the premise that Earth spins, that is begging the question, you stupid Dumbo.
Okay, Nathan, begging the question means...
Is assuming your outcome, assuming the thing that you are trying to prove is in effect at the start of your argument. So if you are trying to prove the Earth spins, stating that we are on a non-inertial spinning reference frame, i.e. a spinning ball Earth, is assuming your outcome, assuming the thing you are trying to prove. Therefore begging the question, you stupid dick.
You're not trying to prove...
What, that we're spinning? Yeah, you stupid globy fuckwit. That's precisely what you're trying to prove with Coriolis.
No, Nathan, you're assigning that attempt of proof to what the argument actually is, or the exploration of the idea of Coriolis, or the exploration of...
Coriolis has got sod all to do with globe Earth. It's just an effect you can see on a roundabout. So how has this got anything to do with globe Earth? We're not arguing about Coriolis. That's nonsense. We're arguing about whether or not Earth spins.
Yeah, particularly with the idea of a roundabout, because guess what?
No! Are you deaf? We are not talking about Coriolis and a roundabout. We are talking about whether or not Earth spins. Your little ham-handed segue away from what you're actually trying to prove when you claim that you're not begging the question, when you automatically assume Earth spins, because actually we're arguing about Coriolis effect. We're not arguing about Coriolis effect. we are arguing about whether or not Earth spins. And a presupposition that it spins would be a begging the question fallacy, now wouldn't it, dick brain?
Interestingly enough, not, because it's just simply an assumption that you make, and is
An assumption of the outcome you're trying to prove! An assumption of the outcome you are trying to prove. By definition, assuming your outcome. Ergo, begging the question.
assuming an outcome and
Is begging the question! That's what assuming the outcome is. If you're going to tell me now that you assume your outcome in a scientific hypothesis, which is where we got to a couple of minutes ago, I'm going to need a phenomena that we're observing. Don't rumpus me while I demolish your utter horseshit, your begging the question justification. Don't rumpus me, you little shit.
Nathan, I know you're angry.
Is this assumption that you're going to detail now going to form part of a hypothesis?
Nathan, the idea of a hypothesis.
So it is. I'm way ahead of you then. So that would be a yes, Nathan. You're all over this like flies on shit. Yeah, I know. You're going to now equivocate this with a scientific hypothesis. We've already got here once. And I asked what was your phenomena, and then you said you weren't using a scientific hypothesis, you were using a colloquial hypothesis. So I don't give two fucks what you think the scientific hypothesis is going to be in this instance, because you're talking colloquially now, aren't you?
Colloquial.
Yeah, you're talking colloquially, because we're not going to get to the phenomena you observed, because you say no when I ask.
It didn't work with hypothesis or scientific, so now you have to go to colloquial. Interesting.
I think if you're going to mention though that
it's great theory.
Anecdotal evidence actually still is evidence, right?
Not scientific evidence, no. Not with any empiricism, no. Not with any validity that you could assert with certitude, no.
But I saw Loch Ness Monster. I went on holidays to Scotland and I saw it. I was in a boat. I saw him.
I don't care. It's not scientific evidence, and this dick is talking about hypotheses now, isn't he? So if he's contextualizing, don't rumpus me while I pull apart your crappy little argument again. If he's going to argue that this prediction, a hypothesis, a scientific prediction is actually just a colloquial little guess, a Mystic Meg prediction, then I don't give two craps, because we're looking for empiricism in this regard. But we're not getting empiricism. We're getting the fundies who come here assuming automatically that we're on a non-inertial spinning reference frame, that they will scream at us till they're blue in the face that we accept that premise of the outcome they're trying to prove, i.e. begging the question. But this dick's going to say no. When you formulate a hypothesis, you start with a presumed outcome, and then it goes forward to be validated. But you've got to start with a phenomenon that he's not going to give me. He's going to say, no, I'm talking colloquially.
Nathan, you can make assumptions when you're formulating hypotheses.
I know, I've already summarised this, so this is a scientific prediction then.
Nathan, I didn't say that, but
You just told me that in a scientific prediction, you formulate a hypothesis, and you have assumptions in that. But you're not talking about science. You are, as I rightly pointed out only moments ago, equivocating between scientific validity and Mystic Meg predictions.
I'm trying to point out the fact that you don't know the difference between
Yeah, what? You don't even know what you're going to summarise what I don't know? Yeah, I do know. It seems so often that the natural defence of the Glober is to automatically tell the audience that their opponent doesn't understand. In this case, the fuckwit doing it is so stupid he can't even summarise what he thinks I don't understand while he's saying it.
Nathan, you are mixing up the idea.
Yeah. I just summarised that the fuckwit approach here is to say I don't understand something. I do understand. You're equivocating between a scientific prediction, in other words, a hypothesis, a scientific prediction, versus a Mystic Meg prediction, what you call a hypothesis. Because if we're talking science, I'm going to want a natural phenomena, and when I asked, you went, no, I'm talking colloquially. So who cares about whether or not in scientific predictions you make assumptions? Because those assumptions will go forth for validation if it's scientific. And if it's not, I don't care about your Mystic Meg prediction.
And you just proved my point.
No, I didn't. I didn't prove anything that you've had to say here. All you've done is try to justify all the other fundies who come here and demand that we automatically assume the Earth is spinning. Something that I've concisely pointed out is a begging the question fallacy, assuming the outcome you are trying to prove. And you've said, no, when you formulate a hypothesis, part of the hypothesis is an assumption. Yeah, well, what about the other half of the hypothesis? Would that be the contrapositive of your assumption? The complete polar opposition, saying that what you've assumed in the alternative is absolutely incorrect in the null, because you don't seem to be mentioning that part of the scientific prediction. When I ask you about anything to do with the scientific prediction, you say you're not talking about science.
That you just proved what I'm trying to point out.
Yeah, that's the same shit rebuttal as last time. I've just proved your point, have I? Yet your point is that begging the question and making an assumption is actually part of a hypothesis, which by your standard is actually a colloquial hypothesis, not a scientific hypothesis, that would have a valid prediction, which would have a hypothesis, and a null that said that what you presume is the cause isn't actually causing the effect. That's scientific, but I've said this 3 times when it comes to me asking you for the first step of the scientific method that would be formulated into a scientific prediction, otherwise known as a hypothesis. We'd have both sides, null and alternative, not just your assumption, not just Mystic Meg predictions. But again, I'll ask you for the first steps and you'll tell me you're not talking about science, or that I've proven your point.
I am saying that you are confounding the idea of an assumption made during a hypothesis versus assuming the outcome. Completely.
No, I'm not. Assuming the outcome isn't anything to do with a hypothesis when you're begging the question. If your outcome in an argument is that Earth is spinning, and you start with the premise that we're on a quote, non-inertial spinning reference frame, all that's saying is I automatically assume Earth is spinning in this example. That's begging the question. A hypothesis has an assumption also. It assumes the cause of an effect. The thing about science is it actually goes forth to put it into an experiment and validate, or, the null hypothesis, invalidate what you assume causes the effect. That's what gives you the empiricism. So I would put you to task at this stage to give me the scientific null that you've got for your presumed cause that the Earth is spinning. And the way you'd validate or invalidate that null is to vary it. So if your assumption in a scientific hypothesis is that Earth spins, because that's not a begging the question fallacy, it's actually a variable I can manipulate. I'd ask you how the hell you're going to manipulate Earth turning, and the answer is I can't, making it also an invalid scientific hypothesis. But you're not talking about science, you're talking colloquially, Mystic Meg predictions that are definitely not suddenly valid because you've said they're a hypothesis in colloquial terms. Tell me,
Nathan, it seems like
I don't understand. Go on, how predictable are
Yeah.
you going to be? Maybe you tell me I've made your
like-
point. Maybe that'll be an excellent rebuttal. You've just made my point, Nathan.
Yeah, you did.
Wow,
Okay,
you
can I
are
ask-
so
Can I
predictable.
ask why
By
would
talking
you
about a
only be
by talking
speaking
about
about
assumption in the middle of a hypothesis.
So we are doing a scientific prediction here.
Nathan, you just laid out exactly why you can make assumptions in the
RC
middle of hypotheses.
Meisty?
Good job.
Why would you only be speaking about a hypothesis colloquially? Why wouldn't we be talking about science? I mean,
Nathan,
isn't
that's
that the
Nathan's
point
language. I
of
didn't
this
say
conversation?
What he's doing is he's rumpusing you. While you try and put a concise question to him, he'll talk through every word you say, Chocolate, because the words we have to say are pertinent, poignant, and devastating to his argument. So it's probably best that he talks through every word you say and your question isn't heard concisely, because that's possibly going to give him a chance of ignoring what you say. So I'll ask him kindly, please don't interrupt Chocolate. Thank you.
I'm just curious as to why you would
He lasted
not
2
speak
seconds.
about a hypothesis
Chocolate, hold on. He lasted
scientifically.
Chocolate. He lasted 2 seconds. The moment you started talking, he started talking. Because as I say, their only defence at this point is to attempt to stop these arguments, the ones that they need to go away and ask on physics forums for the answers, those pertinent questions that trouble them greatly, that they have to go away and spend hours, days, weeks and years researching to not come up with answers for, their only defence is to try and attempt to stop those questions reaching an audience, which is what RC's doing now. So I ask him kindly to shut his mouth, and instantly the moment you start talking, he tries to stop the devastating question being put to him. I'll try again a bit less politely. Shut your mouth, you stupid fundy globehead.
Are you?
So what? He managed again 2 seconds.
Are you feeling?
I'm asking you to shut up so Chocolate can put a question to you. You just can't manage it.
RC Meisty, can you hear me? Well, if you can hear me, I'm very curious as to why you would come in here and not speak about a hypothesis in a scientific manner. Why would you only be speaking about a hypothesis colloquially?
I never said that I was speaking about a hypothesis.
Really?
Liar. Now
So
he's saying
what
he's
did
not
you
used
say
the word
then?
hypothesis, which he absolutely has on multiple occasions. Now he's saying he's not talking about a hypothesis.
Nathan said,
and now he's interrupting me, pointing out that he's a liar, because the obfuscation is the only tactic. Yes, you have contextualized this as a hypothesis. Yes, you use that word. No, you haven't not used it. You are a liar.
I didn't use the word colloquial hypothesis. You used that, not me.
But is our
Sorry.
hypothesis not as scientific anyway?
Oh, so we are talking scientifically then. I've asked that 3 times. So this is a
I
scientifically...
also
I am not asking you to start interrupting me again as soon as I do clarify what I am asking for. RC, you fundy prick. I will ask my question unimpeded, fundy. So,
Are you angry?
given the... That was 2 seconds. Yeah, you're not going to obfuscate this point, you little bastard. I'm going to ask it concisely and you're going to damn well listen to me. If you talk while I talk, it just demonstrates you can't cope with my troubling questions.
This is so funny.
Shut up, whoever that was. I don't need to know how you find this amusing. I want to know, given that this has not been defined by you as colloquial definitions being given to the word hypothesis, I am asking you specifically if we are contextualizing it scientifically then.
What's your question?
Was that RC Meisty asking that?
Yeah, what's your question?
Is this contextualized scientifically then? Question mark. Over.
I simply said the word hypothesis.
So is that scientific then?
Nathan, if you want to scream about science...
Yeah! I'll ask you for the 5th, 20th and 40 millionth time while you completely ignore the question. So, given that you have used the word hypothesis, are you contextualizing this in science or not?
I'm not using your pigeonhole definitions. I said the word hypothesis. Take it as you will.
I'm asking you. I'm not going to take it as I will. I'm asking you. Is your use of the word hypothesis contextualized accurately in science or not?
What's your definition of science?
Your definition! Your use of the word!
Oh, my use of the word?
Yeah! What kind of a dumb fuck are you?
My use of the word is when you make an educated guess based on your observations.
Is that scientific? So not scientific then?
I'll let you do the ascription there.
Yeah, well, that is not scientifically being contextualized then. So this is a Mystic Meg hypothesis. No empiricism being offered whatsoever when we actually beg the question and make an assumption that Earth is spinning. This is not going to be taken forth and given scientific empiricism. It's just a mystic meg guess, a colloquial hypothesis, where he makes an assumption and says it's fine to do so, because he's got a colloquial hypothesis. Because no, I will define it. This is not scientific. So who cares about your crap mystic meg hypothesis? It's not got any empiricism. So, yeah, who cares? Just begging the question, assuming your outcome, assuming Earth spins when that's precisely the thing you're trying to prove. How do my balls taste, Fundy?
I mean, unless, of course, he's planning on validating that hypothesis and hasn't told us that part yet. I mean, that's
No,
possible,
he's made it
right?
clear. This is not scientific. Just a little guess based on an
are we just
observation.
making magical hypotheses and not going to validate, or are we just going to leave it at that?
No, it's acceptable in his version of a hypothesis to make a little assumption. The fact that in a scientific hypothesis that assumption would be tested is irrelevant for him because this isn't scientific. It's a mystic meg prediction. It's not going to be given any empiricism whatsoever. But according to him, that's the justification, because in a equivocation between the colloquial hypothesis and a justifiable reason to have an assumption, that would be in a scientific hypothesis, i.e. it's going to be validated or invalidated by way of experimentation, but that's not what he's got. He's got a ham-handed shit equivocation between a colloquial hypothesis and a scientific hypothesis to justify a begging the question fallacy when they argue Coriolis. That's what he's got. I would imagine that the next thing out of his mouth will be to tell me that I don't understand something.
You guys have weird versions of science. I mean, this guy says hypothesis, I'll just assume. And then what was it doing yesterday with science is just making a little observation and writing it down. And there you go.
This guy said. This guy said it worse, not just making an observation and writing down what happens. He's saying, I make an assumption of what the world is and then go from there. But that's okay because it's a mystic meg hypothesis with no empiricism. Not science. But I'll say that a scientific prediction has got a little guess in it, in the hypothesis? Yeah, it's called an equivocation fallacy. Just a crappy little fallacy, like all of them. He thought it'd slip it past his little equivocation between these two different meanings of the word hypothesis. Yeah, but his equivocation fallacy didn't slip by me. This dumb fuck didn't win. Too smart for you, shit for brains. Didn't slip past with your little equivocation. The long silence when I asked him whether or not this was science was because it absolutely isn't, but his justification for the presupposition was that in a hypothesis, it's got an assumption. That was his equivocation.
Wouldn't there have to be an observed phenomenon? And what would that be? Like, I'm standing still, I'm sitting still, so what would be the observed phenomenon?
According to the globe rhetoric, the phenomena would be the apparent deviation of any projectile in its inertial reference frame when it leaves the claim to be, this is the begging the question part, claim to be spinning non-inertial reference frame of the globe Earth. When something leaves the claim to be spinning non-inertial reference frame that they beg the question, immediately assume is the case, they claim there's a deviation. Well, there isn't. Planes don't deviate. Balls don't deviate, drones don't deviate, hang gliders don't deviate, nothing deviates. But the phenomena they claim in the first instance, in order to beg the question, and just automatically assert that Earth is spinning, is that there is a deviation as demonstrated by Coriolis effect. Now when you get into the nitty gritty of this, you'll end up arguing about the effects of Coriolis, which is precisely what they want. So long as the argument started with you assuming that the premise we are talking about here is a spinning reference frame, analogous with Earth, which is absolutely what they're assuming, is the case in all arguments for Coriolis effect. Just like this funding RC guy, who just said, no, it's okay to have an assumption, because that's what they do in a hypothesis. Yeah, the alternative, 50% of the hypothesis, not in the null. Yeah, the null would say that your assumption's wrong. He just doesn't mention that, and when asked if it's science, he says, no, it's colloquial. A little equivocation fallacy that didn't get past us. The point of the fallacy is that he's justifying the assumption they make, And the assumption in this instance is Earth spinning. It's always going to be a non-inertial spinning reference frame. We're always going to beg the question. It's okay to assume our outcome because a hypothesis has an assumption in it. That's what his justification was. Crappiest argument ever. These fundies need to up their game. They're getting slaughtered here daily.
So what is the hypothesis, Nathan?
A hypothesis is a scientific prediction. It predicts the cause of an effect.
So it's an educated guess.
Let me say it simply if I can.
Sorry.
Can I say it simply?
An educated
There is
guess.
no...
No.
Oops. Oh, I'm sorry.
So a hypothesis is not an educated guess.
No. Your independent variable would be an educated guess. Did you hear me?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, the independent variable, the thing that R.C. Meister, that'd be me talking. Yeah. The one who's destroying your religion of a globe was talking. So you better shut up, fundies. It's time for another ass beating. Yeah. In R.C.'s little equivocation, he's justifying the presupposition of an Earth that spins based on that particular part of a hypothesis. So your educated guess is the premise of all arguments for Coriolis. That educated guess that is yet to be verified is the justification that R.C. Meister has got for automatically assuming Earth is turning. Something that in a scientific hypothesis, which R.C. Meister didn't have, would go forth to be verified. And do you know how they'd verify that educated guess, my friend? They'd vary and manipulate it. So I'd like to know how anybody who thinks that they're going to scientifically validate Earth turning is going to vary and manipulate that little assumption, this independent variable. The assumption that Earth is turning. Because I'd like to see one of you vary and manipulate that little independent variable now. On you go, Fundy. How are you going to vary that little assumption that you're making? Tell me that.
I mean, I see
Hold on,
this
Chocolate.
almost like
Hold on.
gas pressure.
Hold on.
Like,
Chocolate. I want someone to tell me how this little assumption, this independent variable of Earth turn, is going to be varied. Because this is what we're talking about. This assumption is the independent variable in a hypothesis, meaning it must be varied. So I want a stony silence from the morons who think they live on a sphere while they think for a moment about how they're going to vary Earth turning. That presupposition. In other words, the standpoint that they will assume that's the case in their arguments. Not vary it and validate it. So how are you going to vary this little assumption, fundies?
Right, so in your experiment, you're automatically assuming that the Earth is flat and stationary.
It's not an assumption.
But in our experiments, we can't assume that...
Oh, what a wanker. So what, change the subject time? Yeah, it's not change the subject time to something that you're going to now claim I've been claiming this entire argument. We are absolutely talking about Earth turning, not about my claim Earth's flat. That's not what's on the table or being argued about. That would be called a red herring. That's also a fallacious argument, my friend. So let's not red herring me here with a different argument that we're not talking about. We're talking about you with an assumption that Earth turns and its description within a hypothesis. With an assumption that it doesn't. Shut up! Just because I'm destroying your religion doesn't mean you talk through the demolition of your religion. We are talking about your fundy assumption that Earth is turning. Now, in the context of a hypothesis, that would be called an independent variable. And I want to know how you, the religious fucktard, varies your presumption that Earth turns. Vary your presumption that Earth turns.
Mute your watch face. Okay.
Steering mumbling. What shock.
So would you say our hypothesis? Do you say a hypothesis has to have a DV and an IV?
I don't care. At this stage, we're talking about an independent variable. The presumption they're justifying in this regard with Earth turn. They're saying it's okay to justify Earth turn as a presuppositional argument because in a hypothesis, you've got a presumption. Okay, that presumption in a hypothesis is the independent variable. Variable. The thing that you presume causes an effect. Well, if they're going to presume that Earth turn is a justifiable variable, they're going to talk through me saying this because it rapes their religion. So I'll say it again, stick these bastards all on mute while I summarise that their assumption is being equivocated with hypotheses. And that assumption in a hypothesis is an independent variable. So your assumption, to have it validated, would need to be varied. Now, I'm asking for the third time to the fundies who keep interrupting me, how the smeg you're going to vary Earth turning, that which you're assuming is the thing you're trying to prove.
But I'm still on hypothesis, Nathan.
What about it?
Can you explain to me the steps of the scientific method?
Step 1, observe a natural phenomena. Step 2, formulate a scientific prediction, otherwise as a hypothesis, which will have both independent and dependent variables. Your dependent variable being the observed phenomena you observed at stage 1, and your independent variable being that which you assume causes the effect. Step 2 hypothesis will also have a null, the mirror opposite, which will state that that which you assume causes the effect does not cause the effect. Step 3, validation or invalidation by way of systematic experimentation. That is the scientific method. The section of this method I am particularly interested in this regard is the assumptive part. That would be the independent variable, that which you assume causes the effect. In this instance, we have a presupposition that's used when arguing that Earth is turning, by way of presuming Earth is turning, and demanding we accept all arguments for Coriolis take place on a non-inertial spinning reference frame, otherwise known as begging the question that Earth is turning in all examples. So, if we are going to equivocate that it is acceptable to have a presupposition or an assumption because a hypothesis has one, then I'm going to ask you whether or not you have a null, something that mirrors your presumption as incorrect. And if your presumption has been validated by step 3 in this method you are asking me about, that would be the systematic experimentation that proves or disproves that which you assume. So if we're going to assume Earth is turning, I want to know how it's been validated empirically by way of experimentation. Not a justification that a hypothesis does have a presupposition in it, because it does, and it also has the mirror opposite, saying that what you presume does not cause the effect. So a hypothesis is useless for claiming something happens because a hypothesis has got a null, which says the complete opposite. The Earth turn doesn't cause whatever the smeg you're claiming the phenomena is. I didn't get that far because I.C. Meisty went no, no, no when I asked him for step 1 and said it was a colloquial hypothesis. So let's just get it clear before this absolute fuckwit tells me that I don't understand a hypothesis, which is usually the next step, that I do understand a hypothesis. And I'm talking about the begging the question fallacy used when assuming Earth turns and the justification thereof that in a hypothesis you have an assumption. Okay?
Right, so your step 1 is not to have an idea and pose a question.
No. Clearly you're deaf and can't listen. Try to pay attention to the words I actually say. Step 1, I'll say it slower for you, the retard, globe earth believer, who couldn't listen to what I said only 2 minutes earlier. Step 1, observe natural phenomena.
Right, okay, that's nowhere in the scientific method. In the scientific method that I have asked about, nowhere and no one has ever said a natural phenomena. The only person I ever hear asking for a natural...
It's a baseless assertion fallacy. Nobody has ever said it. It's the dependent variable in your hypothesis. If you had the vaguest notion what science was, you'd appreciate that a natural phenomena is your dependent variable. It's half of the hypothesis.
I think what he's trying to share is he's been misinformed by everyone all his life.
I don't care if he's stupid. He's saying nowhere does it say that you need a natural phenomena to observe. The natural phenomena is the effect. Science is exclusively interested in cause and effect. The effect is the phenomena, you stupid retard. I'll say it again because it was met with total silence from this dumb shit who's telling me I don't understand, of course, while he stutters and stammers his limited understanding of science to me. I understand what science is. It's exclusively interested in cause and effect relationships. The effect being the phenomena you're trying to study, you stupid bonehead.
Carry on.
You stupid dick. You are wrong. To assert that science doesn't have step one as observing a phenomena, when it's the effect you're trying to figure out the cause of, when it's half of your hypothesis, makes you certifiably stupid.
Right, okay, so Cambridge is wrong. Yeah?
You haven't cited anything. You haven't given any cowbell. You haven't given me any examples that you've then given a demonstration of how the methodology's been formulated. You've said Cambridge are wrong.
Yeah, because they told me that the first step in the scientific method is to have an idea and pose a question.
Pose a question? You think posing a question is something that can be established as a cause and effect? I'll ask again, because his dumbfounded silence says it all. You think asking a question is something that can be put through a method that establishes the cause of an effect? Second dumbfounded silence. Do you, the bonehead retard that has presumably just Google searched this 10 seconds ago, believe that asking a question can give you a question where it needs a cause and effect relationship answering? Third time.
Right, so how do you...
Don't ask me something. Do you think that asking a question will give rise to a circumstance that needs a cause and effect relationship establishing?
I think asking a question has to be your first step, because if you don't ask that question or have that thought, you're not going to have a hypothesis. You're not.
Really? Will I have chicken for tea tonight? That's a question that I've just asked. Now formulate that total shite into a scientific hypothesis. Whether or not I have chicken, a question that I've raised. Apparently this is step one. Let's see if we get to step two with whether or not I'll have chicken dinner.
Right, so what's step two then, Nathan?
Will I be able to put with whether or not I have chicken dinner, a question I've asked, which is apparently, according to you, a retard, the first step of the scientific method. Apparently it's asking a question. Will I have chicken dinner tonight? Now let's see where your step two... I've already given my step two. Formulate scientific hypothesis. Establish independent and dependent variables and a null. I've already answered this question, but you're saying step one I've given, observe a natural phenomena, is wrong. And that in reality it's actually ask a question. So I'm asking a question, and I want to see how you get on formulating the question I've asked into step two of what you're now going to tell me is the scientific method. So the question is, will I have chicken dinner?
Ask your question. Instead of talking over people, and then when you don't hear it...
Sorry, this is your rebuttal, is it? You've said that step one is ask a question. I've said, here's my question, put it through step two, or tell us what step two is, and your rebuttal is, you seem to be talking over me.
Step two is...
No, now you're screaming through me. Yeah? Is that how you think this works? No, that's not how this works. Yeah? You claimed step one is ask a question. Now we're putting that to test.
Your answer.
That's demanding answers of me. I've already given my answer. I gave you your answer. You asked me if I understood what the scientific method was, and I gave you all three steps, which is an established method of establishing cause and effect. That's what science is. You said wrong. Step one is ask a question.
So what answers am I demanding from you, Nathan? What answers am I demanding from you? You just said he's now demanding answers from me. I'm not demanding any answers from you at all.
I'm demanding answers
What
from
answers am I demanding?
Highlander,
demanding
you're the
answers
one
of
being
you.
questioned right now, bro.
You made an
You
assertion.
don't get it?
You made an assertion in regards to me being incorrect
and I
about what the
keep
scientific
answering
method was.
his questions, but he keeps shouting over me. And then when after I finished answering him, he then screams and shouts, "Oh, total silence, no answers from them." Yeah, that's because you've just talked over my answer.
Did you not just tell him that the first step is ask a question? Did you
Is
not
to
just
have
say
a
that?
thought, ask a question.
Ask a question, sure. So he just asked a question and is telling you to formulate that into a hypothesis.
It's research.
Did you hear his question?
But he shouted over me.
No, he's just going to
he
go
didn't catch it
into
for talking over.
victim mode. I'm being talked over is what he's now doing, rather than addressing what we've actually put to him. If you're to assert that step one is ask a question, and I say, am I going to have roast chicken tonight? Let's see how that goes in the next step. And you go, well, no, that doesn't formulate into the next step because it's not a phenomena, right? It's not an effect that we need to study, whether or not I'm going to have chicken dinner tonight. Yeah, so you ask a question nonsense gets eradicated by us asking this question. But what you will do as the fundy fuckwit here is you'll tell us that I'm just talking over you. That's all you've got to defend yourself.
Yeah, because that's what you do.
You see? So he's not going to address the fact that he's established with his assertion that step one is ask a question, and that's demolished by me asking a question about whether or not I'll have chicken dinner. Not a phenomena that you're going to study to establish the cause of it. Not at all. Just a random question that anybody can ask, making his first assertion about the first step of the scientific method completely pointless and totally stupid. But there's absolutely no way he'll accept that or address it. He'll just say, I'm being talked over. Oh no. And by doing so, he'll never actually listen to the question again. That's the only tactic they've ever got. Obfuscate the question so you don't have to answer it. Play victim and martyr and claim you've been talked over, rather than listening to the question. Talk through it when it's midway through.
Up and listen to the answer then.
Will I have chicken
You
dinner
said
tonight?
step one. I'm thinking about having chicken dinner for tonight. Yeah. So step two would be your research.
Yeah. What's step three?
Step three is hypothesis.
Oh, right.
Step four is your experiment.
I don't need anything beyond step three. So hypothesis. And what are the constituent parts of a hypothesis?
A hypothesis is an educated guess.
Yeah, that would be your independent variable. That's half of the hypothesis. What's the other half?
What?
You dumb fuck. That's half a hypothesis. What's the other half of the hypothesis?
Never heard what you said. Yeah? You're just a rude, nasty, evil person.
No, that's an ad hominem attack. That's another logical fallacy. I've asked a question. He's not capable of answering. He went, what? So I'll try again. I'm keeping the live show going just to see if this dumbo can actually answer my question. Or just talk through me non-stop. We'll see. So that's half a hypothesis. Your assumption. No, you can't do it, can you, Fundy? Is it just that by talking through me you don't get to hear the question? Is that your tactic now? That's half a hypothesis. Yeah? Your presumption of what is the cause, and I'm asking you what the other half of the hypothesis is.
But your hypothesis is an educated guess, right?
For the third time, half of the hypothesis is your educated guess in regards to what caused, and now I'm asking you what the other half of the hypothesis is.
Why does a hypothesis need to...
Now he's asking me a question. Yeah, that doesn't fly here, Fundy Dick Brain. I'm asking you for the other half of a hypothesis. You've got to step 4 in your method. And your method
Nathan,
says formulate...
Let him ask a question, Nathan. Let him ask his question and then answer his question. It's a legitimate question.
I've given you the explanation of a hypothesis.
No, you've given us half.
Now you're asking
no, you
for
haven't.
multiple parts.
No, you have not. You have given us half.
I told you it was an educated guess.
That's half.
Yeah?
I'll say you're just going around in circles and rumpusing my point so you don't have to address it. That's not a hypothesis. That's half of a hypothesis. And I want to know what the other half is, because it's the demolition of your argument. It's my point. But you're not answering. You're saying it's just an educated guess. No, that's not a hypothesis. That's half of the alternative hypothesis. What's the other half?
So what's an alternative hypothesis?
I
then,
don't
Nathan?
need to educate you in science. You're supposed to be telling me that I'm wrong based on
I'm
your
not
version,
using an
and now you're just a rude man. You're just talking through me all the time, rude man.
Any other
You're
type
just
of
talking through me
hypothesis?
all the time, rude man. I was in the middle of a sentence. You're laughing at Fundy. You're being obliterated. You're now asking me what an alternative hypothesis is, which admirably demonstrates that you haven't got the vaguest clue what a hypothesis is. But in your version of what a hypothesis is, you have stated quite clearly that it's a prediction.
It's an educated guess.
And now you're talking through me again, aren't you, rude man? It's troubling, I know.
Yes.
So don't.
I know.
Yeah, you've
It's
only
quite
given
hard,
us...
like,
Yeah, it's back to the same point that you keep obfuscating. You've only given us half the hypothesis, and I want the other half. You could just have some humility and say, I don't know what the other half is, demonstrated by me having to ask what an alternative hypothesis is. You could just say, I don't know, and then I'll tell you.
I gave you your hypothesis.
You gave me half.
It's not my fault.
It's not. You're giving me half a hypothesis, is leaving out the bit that makes my point.
Oh.
And you just don't want to listen?
It hurts
Fundy?
your brain. I know.
Don't want to listen? You want to talk through me? You've given me half.
I'm here for you, buddy. I'm here for you. Don't worry. We'll get through this.
What?
There's no need
The
to
other
get
half of
upset.
the hypothesis. It's not just the prediction. The other half you haven't detailed and still haven't. Okay, you seem to be laughing.
Nathan,
about
I'm
it.
just fucking with you, mate.
You just fucking with me? No. You are a retard. You don't know what the other half of the hypothesis is. You haven't got the vaguest notion what science is. You've wiki searched it, and now you're parroting off whatever Cambridge said in that wiki search you did, and you're having your ass handed to you. We've got to step 4 in your claim to be scientific method, and it says establish a hypothesis. You've said it's a best guess. I've pointed out that's only half a hypothesis, and when we get to this stage, rather than having some humility and saying, I don't know what the other half is, you're going to say, I've given it you. That's the end of my expertise. I can't detail what it is. That just makes you a complete fucking retard. It doesn't mean that you're fucking with me. It means I'm admirably demonstrating how stupid you are. Now, you don't have to like that, and you can attempt to obfuscate every time I ask you for the other half of the hypothesis, and you can tell me you've given it me 50 times. You haven't. When we finally get there, I will just summarise the other half of the hypothesis and point out exactly why this idiot is laughing.
He's gone insane.
This is how you cope with stress. This is a coping mechanism, is it? When you're under a high degree of stress, you go into fits of giggles when you're having your ass handed to you.
Question. Here's a question for the...
No. This isn't a question for me. I'm asking you for the other half of the hypothesis. We're at step 4 of your claim to be method, and we're at the hypothesis stage. You've said it's a best guess prediction, and I've said that's only half the hypothesis. What's the other half? This is all based on me stating that step 1 is observe a natural phenomena. And the other half of the hypothesis is not only your presumed cause, it's also what it's causing. The effect. Now, that effect is a naturally occurring phenomena. Yeah? Something that he said, it says nowhere, anywhere, that you need a natural phenomena, even though it's half of the hypothesis. Now, I know Chuckles here thinks that his ignorance is extremely amusing, or thinks his ignorance is actually him messing with me. It isn't. It's yet another demonstratable retard coming here after a quick wiki search and having their ass handed to them by people who do actually understand what science is. That do understand that asserting your Earth is spinning as the starting premise of your argument is begging the question, and a justification that science uses assumptions. Yeah? Science uses assumptions that they can verify with experimentation. And the experimentation uses the assumption of the cause of the effect, the phenomena we're studying. Now, in the case of a presupposition of a spinning ball Earth, the claim to be phenomena that you're never going to put through the scientific method is going to be a Coriolis deviation, or the lack thereof, depending on which funder you are. Yeah? Well, that assumption's never going to be verified by science with any empiricism, because you can't vary that which you assume causes the effect. So rather than putting it through science, what you do is say it's acceptable to beg the question. It's okay to just automatically assume, because in science they have assumptions in hypotheses, don't they? Yeah, they do, but they also verify them, or prove them to be incorrect by testing them. And how do they test them? By varying what they assume. And these fundies are never going to vary Earth turning, because Earth doesn't turn. It's just a presupposition. And with that, I'll say if you are watching this on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you're watching this live on the Nathan Oakley 1980 stream, then this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat. I think there was actually one I didn't read out. Let's have a look. Globe Zombies, Dispinning Balls Doctrine, Pseudoscience from Earth is Seriously Flat. Thank you very much for the super chat. Earth is Seriously Flat, really appreciate your support. Also, a massive thank you to all of today's live panel for making this live debate possible. As I say, stay tuned if you're watching on Nathan Oakley premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!